Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Workplace Wanderer. That was a new attempt at the intro.
I like
Thoughts?
it.
You
It's
okay?
good.
Oh, that felt so genuine. Thank you. Uh, Kara, good to see you.
I don't really like giving constructive feedback, to be honest. And yes, I probably am in the wrong business.
I always think about you when you said people who can't do teach. When it's like
Mhm.
these things that like I make a mistake as like a leader or doing something, I'm like, well, that's why I like to teach people how to do this.
I've heard like the odd you do an announcer voice with a little more lean in. I've heard you do that before.
I've been sampling new intros, and it's mixed reviews so far. We're working on finding the right one. Well, that voice everybody just heard, or if you're watching this, you already see him. But that voice everyone just heard is our guest today, and is a friend of mine and fellow TEDx William James College speaker, Mike Sweeney. Mike, welcome to the
Woohoo!
podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
So, as always with the podcast, we like to have our guests introduce themselves as just a means to be more inclusive. We always feel different on different days, and I don't want to pigeonhole you into your pre-written bio. So, if you don't mind, give us a bit of background of who you are, how you would like to introduce yourself today.
Hmm. That is a nice open space to walk through. I would say I'm a walking paradox where just when you think you got me figured out, I'm something different.
Hmm.
Uh, I'm an Army veteran who's also a proud girl dad. So you get both and.
Hmm.
Uh, I have done corporate work and now I'm out on my own and working at a startup. So big and small. Lived on the West Coast, now on the East Coast. Formally, professionally, I'm an executive and team coach, and I'm an adjunct professor of groups and teams. So I spend a lot of time with executives, a lot of times with duos, CEO, COO combos, and a lot of times with teams. And my passion really is in embracing the both and.
And that's what your TEDx was all about, the both and.
It was, and I started researching a completely different topic, and it evolved into the both and. And I was
Right, because
reading
your title changed, right? Halfway through.
it absolutely did. I mean, I started with a concept of how data and emotional insight leads to long-term sustainable change. And that was really exciting for me. And then I went to New Zealand for 3.5 weeks and I came back and didn't want to do that at all.
Oh, interesting.
And I
Hold
found
on. Hold on.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's not skip past that, Mike. What happened in New Zealand?
Lots happened in New Zealand. I was actually there. I've been a distance runner for a long time, and usually I'm running a marathon or something like that. And this time I was crewing my partner, who made it to, she would hate that I'm communicating this in a podcast, but she made it to the World Championships of the Half Ironman. So I was there as
Oh,
support crew.
she doesn't like to talk about that.
No, not at all, and hates when I bring it up. So Laura, I apologize
Yeah.
that I
I
just brought it up on
I
a
feel like
podcast, but
that's
that's why I was in New Zealand. I was crewing and holding signs and holding broken necklaces.
That
I
is my like ultimate like goal to be that much of a badass. Where I'm like, oh, I just like qualified for like a world championship, but don't tell anybody.
can
Yeah,
I
we
also
should
tell you
probably
that
move on from
yeah.
that.
But I just want to say like I don't think I've ever met anybody who does Ironman or half Ironmans or any of this stuff that doesn't love to talk about it. So it sounds like Laura's a breath of fresh air.
Indeed, humble and excellent.
Awesome.
So that's we were doing that in New Zealand. It was so beautiful, and I really just didn't think about the TEDx at all. When I got
Mm.
back, I started having a conversation with my white collar thought partner, ChatGPT, as you do, and I started looking for research on data and emotions and the power of the combo. And I ran into an article called "Toward a Theory of Paradox," written by two women who wrote a book called Both and Thinking. And there was a concept in there called emotional equanimity, and I had to look it up. And it was about the how much emotional calm and balance you need to even engage in a both and conversation. And I went, oh, that's been my problem all along. And I started to think about how difficult it is in a world where we're really at odds with each other, especially in the US, and what is needed to have conversations that move things forward when two sides don't agree. And so I thought that the data and the emotional insight became a broader umbrella that was paradox and polarity management. And I found that I'd been doing it a lot through my career, in-person training and digital, bringing stability and change to a lot of organizations. And that got me to start working on paradoxes. And I realized that, wait a minute, I was a liberal arts major who had to jump into a tank. So that feeling of being both and not quite in and not quite out at the same time really fit me thematically.
That's so
Yeah.
interesting. I always think about that. I think it's ill-advised business advice that you need to like niche down, right? Like you need to find one thing and that's the only thing that you should do. And I'm like, well, what about the people that don't want to? Like,
Hmm.
what if you like a bunch of different things? Then you're just going to remove the passion from everything you do. I mean, I understand it from a marketing standpoint, but I also think it's okay to give people the freedom to say like it's a if you don't like that, you could reject it.
So you're bringing up a really nice paradox here: niche or passion.
Hmm.
And there might be a way to consider both.
Yeah.
The way it made sense for me, I remember working with a brand coach, and she was telling me about how important it was to have a consistent story. And I remember yelling, "But I exist in multitudes," which is a quote from Whitman, and I was really pushing back against it. And then I found that trying to find a way towards congruence, where things are all lined up and make sense, and where the red threads are that you can sew through, is a way to focus or niche down and enable the passion when I want to work on multiple things. Like, is there a red thread to the story that people can come back to
Mm.
consistently? And I think it might be an and.
Yeah, that's a great way of summarizing that for sure.
Why do you think people struggle so much with that both and mentality? And I want to just preface it is that I was doing some reading over the weekend, and there was a book by David Cantor called Becoming an Interventionist. And he was talking about the two different models that a lot of consultants take. And one is really coming in as an authority, and there's not much mutual learning. And then there's the mutual learning one. But how often we fail at mutual learning, the process of learning together as we try to form an intervention or a solution. And it's oftentimes related to our uh, desire to win,
Mhm.
Mm.
right? And so is that where why that's so difficult so often, that embracing this both and mentality?
I feel like I'll say personally, and what I've observed, it's very difficult to entertain and listen to another side if it contradicts with a value that you hold dear.
Hmm.
So I used in the talk, I care about the economy or I care about the environment. Oh, so you hate the economy? It's like immediately we're
Yeah.
trampling on something someone really values. You mentioned, is it our desire to win? I mean, I was a little brother. My desire to win was so strong that if I were playing video games, my goal was not to beat the other person. It was to get the other person to throw the controller and say, "This isn't even fun." And that is not a trait that I'm proud of.
I
But it is.
resonate with that so deeply.
Yeah.
So it's not something that I am proud of, but I know it's there. So I think that the first thing that happens is some sort of emotional trigger because a value is hitting a third rail. And so if it's I'm pushing something about digital learning and someone starts to communicate why in-person learning is so valuable, it's because they don't think I understand that. And they don't realize that they feel like I'm taking something away. So when you're placed in an either or situation, there's a natural defensiveness and natural digging in of the heels. And I do think some of it is related to wanting to win, but it's also related to protection. Every time we go into a system or an organization, something is already in place. There is a culture that is in place. There is a process in place. So if we're going to drive change, usually taking the appreciative inquiry approach and understanding what is and what's the best of um, is an important first step that allows the sense of a co-created future. When I first started at Bain& Company, the chief HR officer at the time, he's now the chief leadership officer, gave me a really good lesson. I told him, what's going to be the biggest challenges I'll run into with driving change? And I had a change project of about 5 years there. He said, first, we're successful and we know it. So pride in how the organization is structured and how good it is now is going to be something. But the other thing he said is stuck with me. He said, before you do any change, you need to consider the culture like a grain of wood and find the grain before you go the opposite way. And that really opened my eyes to figure out, like, what do I need to study? What do I need to observe in a culture to know which way the wood is going before I come in and just go opposite? It's almost like petting a shark. Like, you can do it one way, but the other way is dangerous to you.
I, getting to know you a little bit over the past few months, I feel like you really do a great job of embodying that principle, just based off what I've seen. Like I don't even know how to explain this that I've seen in you, but you just put into words how I see you as an individual, of somebody who really gets their finger on the pulse of what is happening in the environment in the moment and tries to do your best to go with that flow. But at the same time, trying to find your place, your individual place in it as well, and differentiate yourself. So I guess that is in itself a both and. You go with the flow of the culture and what's happening around you, but then you also make your own stamp.
Yeah, I mean, I love to hear that. People I've worked with before might not feel that, but I think maybe it's and I try to find that culture, and at the same time, I have a sense of how great it could be.
Mhm.
And maybe that's related to personal development or this kind of work, trying to move toward a better standard in the future. So I try to hold being okay with what is and then also having an aspiration for how good it can be. And I feel like I can hold a good deal of creative tension. I'm kind of like holding an elastic in my hand right now. I have a pretty good ability to hold a lot of tension between how it is and how it could be. And as long as I keep that tension taut, uh, but not so that it breaks, then I'm okay. But every system has a different level of tension that they can handle when you're trying to create some change.
Well, I will also say I think that you do push a little bit
Mhm.
until like right before it breaks, I think. Like you have a natural ability to question what's happening as well, see if it can be made better or if something can change.
It makes me think of Seinfeld's definition of like how they came up with maximum strength Tylenol. Figure out what'll kill me and then back it off a little bit. So sometimes I feel like maybe I'm pushing a little too hard. Um, but I think that I played with this concept of the edge quite a bit, like getting to the point where people have a choice to kind of get to the precipice and then walk back down off the cliff, or take that creative and courageous step forward into the unknown. And so sometimes I do give a little bit of a nudge to try to see where that tension is could be increased to drive towards something somebody wants. Like I do that in a lot in executive coaching. And if somebody's a little nervous, I'll walk beside them, but I will give them a little nudge. Say, what's that thing that you really want? And is it worth
Yeah,
taking a step toward it?
yeah. I want to go back for a second to the conversation about the both and thing, and because I guess from with my background, I look at it from more of a psychological perspective, right?
Mm,
And what is happening of why is this so difficult for us? And I'd imagine a lot of it is fear based, of like a fear of uh, obscurity, fear of feeling like, okay, well, if I give up my power here, or if I include you into my solution, then in some way I am less important and
mm,
I am too afraid to give that up. And it's the drive to win is about a drive to feel important and feel valued. So I imagine a lot of people really dig into that in this process, and that's why it's so hard to truly be inclusive in a conversation or to truly embrace someone else's perspective into your own or meld it with your own. It also made me think, by the way, and have either of you ever heard of this, the terror management theory?
yeah.
Mm, I haven't heard of that
The
one.
fear of death and the awareness of the fear of death.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's often triggered based on when someone shares a different belief than yours. And that's all. They kind of can explain like that's why there's been religious wars our entire existence as human beings, because this other religion is saying like, no, it's this is what we believe. This is the God that we pray to. And they're saying, no, this is the God that I pray to. This is what we believe. And it is such a threat to your human existence that they have to fight over it.
Wow. So I don't know how much is core in an individual versus how much is behavior in response to the group. So when I'm working, I'm typically looking at the organizational psychology lens or the team lens. And you've seen a shark and then minnows all move as one. I don't know how much the individual minnow moves in a team or a system. I think it's
Mm.
like flocking behavior. So when we're coming in to enact some change in an organization, people are responding or adapting to something in the environment, but they're moving together. And even in your conversation about like one religion, the other religion, when you group individuals together, they behave in different ways than they would on their quote own. And even when you're on your own, you're thinking about your family, you're thinking about other people, you're thinking about your animals that are around you, you're thinking in terms of group. So I don't know what the individual psychology is about it because most of the time I'm experiencing organizations either in duos, in teams, or in groups. And even at the individual level, there's still a response to a larger system. Americans, left, right, pro this, anti this. And I think that when you look at behaviors in groups, that tends to be where I spend my time because I think at the individual level, if you and I are talking, you say, I believe in this, and I say, I don't believe in this, we're still attributing ourselves to a larger group, those
Mhm.
who believe this and those who believe that. And that's where a lot of that tension gets aggregated and multiplied because I identify in this particular group and I belong here and you belong here. And now there's like an othering that's not just an individual psychological response, it's a bigger picture of group v group. That's just one perspective. And maybe because I focus there on duos, groups, and teams.
So, Mike, did you get to a point inside of your practice and research where there was almost like an impasse with people? And maybe I'm making an assumption here of this. I work with a lot of groups too, and it's always interesting when there's conflict. I'm asking the question of like, what's the root of the conflict, right? So, were you starting to see so many trends with people and saying, like, if we can figure out how to do this one thing, this is what'll solve for it?
Hmm. Uh, some of this thinking came maybe 10 years ago when I was in my master's, where I had a professor who specifically said, I don't believe in personality. And I was like, what?
Mm.
What are you talking about? And I immediately was upset. I even saw the way you responded. It was like, what do you mean? I believe in personality, right? Like I saw we all had a physical response to that. But it made me think, and he was telling me a story about when he was in a group relations situation where he watched a video like a couple weeks later and was like, oh, that's not me. And I've found that in team situations where if you debrief, sometimes people are like, "Oh, that's not me. That's not
Yeah,
something I would
always.
say." But it
There's always
is.
one. There's always one, and it's always that like certain type, and you're like, I know, you're in every team, buddy.
Well, and when we're thinking about back to the terror management theory or however you approach things, there is a level of anxiety that happens as an individual and as a part of a group. And sometimes in group situations, people are responding on behalf of others.
Hmm.
Let's say for an example, we're in an organization where we're shifting something to a new way of doing things. Someone tends to be really protective about the legacy and wants to make you understand why the way it was set up the way it was. And that shows up as resistance to the change, but it's really a desire for understanding and a desire to have the past be honored. And then you have this new thing coming in. So I guess to your question, Blake, about the psychology of it, or Kara, to your point about did I get to a certain place in my practice? It's just from spending a lot of times with duos and with teams, more so than individuals, that got me to start thinking this way. And it went back to that professor who I started to question really how much is core. Because like when I'm on
Mm.
my own, or even when I'm here, I'm thinking about your audience and you two, and I'm thinking about my girls at home, and I'm thinking about my partner, and I'm thinking about my parents. And I'm not really operating as an individual agent as much as maybe we think we are.
So wait, does that mean that you had a gut reaction whenever your professor said that, but now maybe you side on that thought process a little bit? Like we are who we are as a part of the system in which we exist.
Yeah, and sometimes the behavior that you see in groups is on behalf of everybody else.
Mm,
Like I remember reading some literature around when the anxiety in a group rises to a certain point, the job becomes managing the anxiety, not just doing the work.
Yeah.
And so you see things like people pretending they don't know what's going on. Like the consultant asks a question like, "What were we supposed to do?" Like these are all professional people who are kind of reacting to that stress. Or two people in the organization start the battle that the rest of the organization wants to have, and then they like empower those two people to fight it out. Or you see a lot of in group out group, you know with the fantasy of if only this thing would be so much easier if sales would just blah blah blah,
hmm.
if the CMO would just dot dot dot. You see a lot of that stuff, so it's like disempowering and aiming the blame at someone else. I think it was probably a combination of observation, that comment the professor made, some reading, and I do feel like there's enough of an individual quote unquote personality, or at least traits to me, so that I am consistent in certain places. Um, but I don't know how much of it is, and it's less than I thought it was in the past.
I started writing a paper once about resistance to change and gave up because I realized how broad of a topic that was. And everything that you were just describing falls under that umbrella of resistance to change. And whether it's personal change, professional change, changes within your team, changes with your company, bringing on a tech, something a technology based that you have to shift your company to, whatever it is that's how it shows up. And I just think that's an important point that you just made, is because a lot of for humans we like to put things into boxes, and a lot of the behaviors that you just mentioned, that is what resistance to change actually looks like in people. And that whole the paradox thinking is sort of like on the other end of the resistance. It's like once that resistance that you're talking about has been managed and dealt with, then you can move towards the both end piece. But I imagine that most people aren't used to operating in the way that you're talking about, this paradoxical thinking. So there's a lot of resistance that shows up in weird, funky ways, like you're talking about.
Yeah, and I do it too. So kind of first is the difference between a problem and a paradox. Like a problem is just something to be solved. We know there's an answer, but when we get into something that is cyclical, comes back, stability, change, whatever it is, that feels unsolvable, that's when we have to shift. I was running with a friend of mine, and I like to talk when I run, so we just started talking about healthcare. And I was trying to find the polarities, right? And one of them was like best care for me, and one of them was affordability. And so we started talking about this for a while, and then we got to a point where he felt like um, he might lose quality of care in response to having to pay for someone else. And immediately the defensiveness and the resistance started. And he said, "Well, the system is the way the system is." And so I said, "But who better than us to solve it? We're two guys on a run. We're thinking about this. Why can't we think of it?" Like I started
Yeah.
thinking really animated. And so his resistance led to me to push harder. And then it became the hands. I'm pushing this way, he's pushing this way, until finally I had to drop a hand and kind of realize, you're right, there is a current system in place, and maybe come back and have the conversation later. But it's very natural, even in a conversation of, um, uh, one side, quote unquote, or the other, as you're exploring both, like it's pretty natural to reach those points of pushback, or did you mean it like this, or you said it like this. It's really, really hard work. Even just naming the neutral to positive sides, even that in my TEDx, the focus flexibility. I mean, it started with focus and total disorganization. And that's a really interesting either on that. I'm like, wait a minute, what's the value of the side that I'm not seeing? So even just
Hmm.
like figuring out what the other pole was hard work.
So, okay, so Go
Oh,
ahead. Go
so
ahead, Kara.
oh no. I was just gonna add to that. There's an author I really like. Her name is Julia Bogart, and she writes a lot about critical thinking. And in one of some of her content, she has this thing of like when you're working with somebody who's in opposition to you, you should ask questions. Like you be the one that's more curious. And her question that she suggests that I like the most is how might that create a more beautiful world?
Mm,
Right.
Hmm.
Because like the person who has opposite beliefs, whatever it is, in their mind, what they think creates a more beautiful world. And that's such an interesting thing to hold space for, right? Is that like the way I see the world? That's how I think humans could live together better, but somebody else has a completely different perspective, and they think that that's what's going to create a more beautiful world.
mm. I
Oh,
love that. And like
yeah.
the idea of being curious, I say this a lot about feedback, but I'll kind of reuse the metaphor for curiosity. Like curiosity is a two-way street that you have to drive down first.
Yes.
And that's hard to do. I remember using that expression once in a team setting where I said, feedback is a two-way street, or stakeholder management is a two-way street. You got to drive down it first. And the person said, but what if there's a Mack truck taking up both lanes coming the other way right for you? But to your point about curiosity, finding a way that, how might this be a beautiful experience, or how might this create more beauty in the world, or how might we win if we do both, or how might we both be successful in this? Those like how might we questions can be
Mm-hmm.
really powerful, but we're so busy advocating for what we think is right or defending what we think would go away that we forget to be curious.
And I almost want to push back on that philosophy of the curiosity. And I think in an ideal world, that is exactly how we should all operate. But I almost feel like, and I guess this was the point I was trying to make about the resistance piece, and I couldn't figure out the question with it was, is the tension part of this process of arriving? So especially if you're working with teams and duos, is that tension necessary? And does that conflict in a positive way have to occur? The push-pull or the push-push, does that have to occur in
Hmm.
order for you to arrive at this paradoxical thinking place?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. My personal point of view, and I'm going to talk to think, is that very often in duos or teams, there's too much nice, and not enough conflict. So if you think about surfacing and resolving conflict, well, you have to be willing to surface it. And I think Amy Edmondson talks a lot about psychological safety. Well, what she wasn't creating was a safe space. She was creating conditions for brave spaces.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be able to say the thing. I have just found that there's a really big range in groups' comfort level with tension. And so I think the tension is important, but don't let it turn into friction. But there are some people on a team that really prefer harmony, and there's some people that really prefer debate. So how do you negotiate how much is enough tension for a team? I do believe that some has to be there. As a former armored cavalry officer, I like a bit of debate and tension. And sometimes I like to turn up the stove so things can get cooking. And not everybody prefers that. I'm sorry, I'm like all over the place with metaphors. We got cars driving, we got
I love
stoves
it.
going.
This is how my brain works. It just
Well,
thinks in
it
images.
does take a bit of that tension, and if it's just like someone pushing and the other person falling over, that really doesn't do much. And in order to be able to keep it as tension and not necessarily as friction that really grinds, that's where that emotional equanimity, that ability to pause, the ability to take a deep breath, get curious about someone else's point of view. I think it's something that you said those who can't do teach. Like I'm talking about a very live, visceral experience that happened with a CEO where we were in pretty massive conflict on an almost daily basis. And what it really took was me saying something really rude and then 2 days later realizing, oh, I said focus, he said flexibility. I can now sell this thing he was tinkering with immediately. Oops. Maybe it's good that he tinkers. Maybe flexibility is a good thing. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
walk back with my tail between my legs and start having the conversation that we needed to have of how might we do both instead of me being like, this is the way you should work. You should work on three things and three things only. You should have all your notifications or interruptions off. You should have deep work for 90 minutes, and that is the right way to work. Maybe
Whew.
for me, right? And like that, there's all this theory and research behind it, but not everybody works that way and not everybody resonates with that. So, is there another side that maybe I'm not considering? Um, I kind of feel like I had to discover that accidentally
Mm.
through a more effective way that I wasn't paying attention to.
That's so interesting.
You had to like make space for, somebody working in their own way and having insights and having sporadic moments. And yeah.
I
And
had to
that's,
be wrong.
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Pretty,
it's a,
pretty, but I try to hold my opinions loosely, but I state them with adamance. But
Yeah.
in some
Interesting.
cases, I'm totally wrong and I'm very judgy. And then I realize, like, oh, maybe there's another way. I mean, I still believe all that stuff, that there
right.
is a right way to work, but not for everyone, you know?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
even
And
think, oh, go ahead, Kara.
no, I was just gonna say, like it's interesting, like even you saying that, like as aware as I am to myself, like if anyone ever said anything like that to me, I'd be like out the door. You know what I mean? Just because like that's my personality. Like people just can't tell me what to do. Like you want to
Yeah,
shut me down, try to tell me what to do. God, you know. But
you
if you just
were,
a little bit of like open space, then like I'll create everything in the world. But it's
Mm.
the minute, but I do like I have a rebellious spirit,
Yeah.
like and there's like some, I don't know how much research it's backed, but the author's Gretchen Rubin, and she has this theory called the four tendencies, and it's like how people respond to other people's expectations of their own internal expectations,
Hmm.
right? And so
mm,
then she has like her little quad of all the different types that there are, but mine is like I literally I can't tell myself what to do and no one else can tell me what to do, or everything in me shuts down. So
I,
anyways,
I need to comment that when Kara and I both start to speak at the same time, it's
we get excited.
because it's a good conversation. And I think you said exactly what I was going to say, is that I have also that, I guess, rebellious spirit. And even Mike, I was thinking back on your plan for preparing for the TEDx. And you're like, I have 2 weeks to do this 50 times. And I have a very strict plan I'm going through. If that was my plan, I would have thrown it out the window because I'm like, I can't do that. I'm not gonna put a number on it. I'm not gonna plan when I'm doing it. I'm not gonna schedule stuff out. I'm doing it my way. And that it's just a very different way of operating, but we got to the same result,
Yeah.
regardless.
Yeah, it was a
Mike.
pretty intense last couple weeks, and I did have a lot of rigor toward it. And
Mhm.
sometimes building that system is to keep me focused and on task, but I don't always recommend anything that I do for other people, right? Like I try to
Same.
find out what they need, but like that's the process that works for me. And to invoke Seinfeld again, I read that he had done 200 different preps for his first Tonight Show. I was like, this is probably one fourth below the Tonight Show, maybe less, but I'll do 50. And I also knew that there was a fruit-like ripeness to it. Like I wanted to get it ripe at the right time.
Yeah.
And I think if I had been ready 2 weeks before, almost to the perfect level that I felt like you were, I don't think I could have, man, like my best top one or two was the last one that I did for the camera. And I got really nervous about, am I doing it too much or not enough? And I think that last push, I wouldn't advocate my system. Sometimes people do that in executive coaching there. It starts with like, well, how would you? And I'm like, let me just stop you there. And I do this in my initial session. I say, you are going to be, you at some point have looked at my background and you're going to ask me for my opinion. And it's going to sound like this, Mike, how dot, dot, dot. And so I explain to clients that this is what's going to happen. I'm going to work as fast as I can to find the best three bullets to give you magic as much as I can and distilled goodness. And then you're going to spend 8 minutes telling me why this won't work in your context. So this is what I offer to you. I am going to write that question down, but I'm not going to answer it. I'm going to stick with pulling the best out of you and asking powerful questions to identify what brings out your best tools, resources, and energy. And if I have a point of view, I'm going to do a 5 minute, 10-minute Loom video afterwards, and I'll just tell you exactly how I do that particular
Oh,
thing.
it's
And it's
brilliant.
going to be faster. You can watch it in 1.5 speed, and we don't have to waste the 30 minutes. Sound good? And they're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. So when a how question comes up, I don't think my way, my fast answer to that how question is really what you need right now. So let's keep
Mhm.
digging a little bit deeper. But that is invariably what happens in executive coaching, where people are like, well, how would you do this? I'm like, well, I would do it 50 times in a row in a 6 day period and like absolutely say it out loud on the beach to the dogs, calling everyone. And everyone's like, ugh, I'd never do that. So when people are asking those how questions, I'm usually trying to find a way to figure out what might work for them and not my way, because I don't think my way is all that palatable for everybody.
But that's an important realization to have. I mean, I think a lot of us operate through life thinking that our way is the best. I can't tell you the amount of times, especially early in my career, that I thought of, if you just do exactly what I tell you, you are going to be
No,
huge.
this is
Like,
gendered. But keep
really?
going. Sorry, Blake.
No, I love when we have the gendered conversation. No, it was just, it's like if you just follow my instructions, you're going to be fine, especially working in early recovery with people.
Oh, yeah, that's
Of
interesting.
like, look, there is a system here. There's a template here. And if you just follow exactly what I'm giving you, you're going to be fine. But then I realized as my career went on that even with sobriety, there's not one way to skin that cat. There's many ways to find your sobriety and find what it looks like. For me in the beginning, it was like it's 12 step. 12 step is your answer. Abstinence is your answer. You're wrong if
Mm,
you think otherwise. And you're just going to come back to me in 6 months and be like, hey, Blake, you were right. I'm doing 12 step. And then over time, realize that it's not really about that. It's about whatever works, but it's that pursuit of seeking a better life or whatever it was that people had to do. Um, I think part of that, I guess that's what you call wisdom, right? Like you, as you get older and as you advance in your career and advance in stuff, you gain wisdom to realize that my way is not always the best way, and you have to let other people figure that out for themselves.
There's a lot of hubris in thinking that the right way is our way. I do have a few exceptions. So, for example, if you're making decaf and regular coffee, regular goes on the right because it starts with an R, and that's how you always know. If you're playing cribbage, the crib goes closest to the person who dealt, so you know whose crib it is. So I have a few exceptions where, like, this is the right way, and I will just hold true to it. But there are a lot of things, even in the conversation, Kara, when you said, like, give me some open space and I'll make magic happen. That's not exactly how you said it, but like, that's that situational approach. And I remember learning situational leadership and realizing like, oh, at each task, people are going to need different things. And each person's probably going to need different things. Like what I want for my team when I had a team is I want when someone says like, oh, how does, what's Mike's leadership style? I want each person to describe the way I meet their needs. And I want that to be flexible. Oh, like sometimes he's very directive. Oh, in our one-on-ones, I always talk first. Like it's kind of what that person needs. And I think the idea that if I were working with you, Kara, realizing that like enough distance and directional accuracy, but not precision, would be the key, and open space. Like, let's clarify what a good job looks like, and then what support do you need would resonate more than being like step 3, step 4, step 5, step 6, which
hmm
it seems like you wouldn't resonate with you at all. But I also found that like by trying to convince teenage girls, like, hey, this is the right way, like that's just not
Oh,
the way it works. And you brought up the comment about gender that I'm like really curious to hear
Yeah,
what
me
your point of
too.
view is.
well, I don't know if it's like neurodiversity or if it's gender, but and I also like had a really weird experience where I went and got my master's in OD at 23 years old, right? So it's usually people's second career, and I had this like when my mind was like open and fresh, I went through this experience where people were like, you don't have the answers to anything. Like humans are messy. You just have to give them space to work out their own stuff. Right. So it's pretty indoctrinated into my belief system. But I can pretty much say that like I don't ever think I have the right answers for people. Like maybe when it comes to like getting an infant to go to sleep at night, I have some like pretty standard things I can tell people just because but like when it comes to everything else, like I don't know. I don't know if it's gendered or not, but I haven't really had to wean myself out of the experience of I know I can tell you how to do this and I think I have the right answer. And I
How
don't
lucky are you? I would love
no,
that.
but it's the opposite, right? Like it's like even now, like I'm in my 40s and I've had all these experiences and I probably could give people more direction, but it's hard for me. So I
Yeah.
think that that's your paradox, Mike, right? Like it whether whatever you are trying to wean out of yourself, like there's also going to be another side to it.
It's mastery and beginner's mind.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would say. And the idea that when you have mastery of a certain topic or subject matter, if you had enough reps and you can do that with your eyes closed and at the same time being open to there might be a better way to use that, there might be a way to weave technology and someone else might have a different point of view. Trying
Mm-hmm.
to hold both is important. Like I believe in the pursuit of mastery and at the same time I realize that maybe there's somebody who knows more out there. But it's hard. Like I could tell, even with that coffee one, people are like, no, no, no. I mean, as a waiter, I was like, left hand was the orange,
I've
right
never
hand was the
I've
regular.
never thought about that for 1 minute in my life.
Literally never. And even after you said it, I was like,
And
okay,
someday you're
that
going to
sounds
be
fine.
making decaf and regular, and you're going to be like, oh.
But my husband, if he listened to this, he'd be like, I like that Mike guy. Absolutely. That's
Yeah.
what you should do. No other question.
Well, and it's funny. I remember years ago, I was on a date and I was playing cribbage. That's a whole reason why was I playing cribbage on a date, but we could take that another time. But
I
this
don't even know
person
what cribbage is,
recognized
by the way.
this
Yeah, I wasn't
person.
going to say anything.
It's
Neither
a
do
card
I.
game, old man card
Okay.
game.
Okay.
But like this person recognized how important it was to put it in the proper place and was like playing with it, was like, where am I going to put it? That helped me realize that this probably isn't the right person for me.
It's funny that you bring it up that there are times for structure. There's times for the rules to just be the rules. This is how it's done. Someone's the expert. They explain it to you. And there's times to question. And I think about this conflict that occurs on this every single year. We go on this like friends camping trip, and it's like our week-long thing that we just disappear off the face of the earth in some national park.
Mm.
And every single trip, the same person causes a fight with someone else within the group. And it's always over the rules of a game we're playing, a card game or something we're playing, where he thinks or he says that he can make it better if we just introduce this new rule. And the other person holds firm and says, no, these are the rules. There is no changing the rules. They've existed for years. We're not adding that. We're not changing anything. And it turns into this big fight.
What a
So,
metaphor.
yeah. And I just sit back and watch every time because I'm like, I don't care. Just
This is
play the
so
game.
stupid.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
in a situation like this, can I curse on this podcast or no?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So the real game you're playing is which one of my friends is a competitive asshole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
and we
that's
tell him,
every game night, like that's the game that we're all playing.
we always joke when when we're going to suggest something to do something, we always say, listen, I know I'm probably wrong according to Tyler, but I would like to do this. And we always mess with him about this.
I
I know
love
he's
it.
going to
Like,
say,
now I'm getting nerding out on the humor side, like target other
yeah.
negatively framed to let him know we don't like that thing.
Or we'll propose an idea and be like, by the way, Tyler, that was your idea. And just just make it like
Man,
it's his
poor
idea.
Tyler.
Yeah. Oh,
Oh, Tyler.
he would love this. He would love that we're talking about him.
Mike, can
Uh,
I want to ask you something. What are some of the things that your daughters have taught you as they've
Hmm.
become teenagers when it comes to this topic?
Okay. I used to give report cards and I would ask them to fill in the subjects. and they could give me whatever grade they wanted. And so I realized that I got like a C plus in takes us to ice cream. That's kind of a balanced one. But I remember getting like a B minus and yelling from one of my daughters. And I'm like, first of all, you had to pick that as a subject. And second of all, you had to give me not an A in it. And I think that's probably right around the time I started meditating.
Mm.
And maybe 6, 9 months later, that same daughter was like, something's different about you. Like, you barely get mad anymore. You seem mad, but you're not as blah, blah, blah. So then I'm like, well, I'm always going to do this. So I think they taught me to find a way to communicate without volume because I don't think they liked me communicating with volume.
I love that expression, communicate without volume.
Yeah, like just because you're loud doesn't mean you're winning, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So that's
It's
one. I think the other is, just checking the emotional temperature of the other person. Because like I can find a way to get robotic and deliver a message calmly, even if I'm angry, because I can just disconnect a little bit from the emotions and just say the words. And I remember one time, same daughter, I was saying something to her when she was little, and she goes, but daddy, I'm hying. And she meant I'm crying. It's like, how can you talk to me right? Like, you should be hugging me right now.
Mm.
So realizing
oh
that whatever the emotion is that the other person needs, paying attention to that first before delivering the message. And I probably still mess these up. But those are two that I remember, kind of the volume of my speech and how that impacts other people, and then also looking in the person's eyes and checking the emotional temperature of the person I'm communicating to see if maybe now's the right time. They've taught me so many things
oh,
that
that's
like when I
beautiful. Thank
when
you
I
for sharing
no,
that.
I'll give you one more. When I walk
Yeah.
by the water bowl and I go for the dog and go because it's not full, that's literally the definition of passive aggression.
Because you're passing it.
Like, I'm walking by the water bowl, I see that it's not filled, I'm displeased, and I don't say anything about it. I just go, and they've taught me to say, can you please fill the water bowl instead of the big sigh of displeasure.
Mhm.
So those
Oh,
are
I bet I bet they let you have it, don't they?
yeah. Oh yeah. Like yeah. And like sometimes they can choose not to do it, or they can say like, oh, I just started watching a show and I was sitting down, but have the direct conversation and say, would you please fill the water bowl instead of so those are I could probably go on. I love the question. My girls have taught me a lot.
Yeah, I feel like parenthood is like our own little personal in-house leadership development every day.
Yeah, they're just mirrors, feedback mirrors.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear that all the time, that parenting, and I have no idea. I parent a small Chihuahua that's like 15 pounds.
It's the
Uh,
same.
yeah, okay, good. Well, then I'm an anxious wreck if that's the truth, and I shake a lot.
That's what it is.
Yeah, I shake and get cold very easily, if that's the truth. Um, no, but I hear that all the time. That's really the ultimate test of your leadership because like that is where we are also most emotionally triggered is with family and with our
Mhm.
kids. So if you can control those emotions and still lead with mastery, I guess I would say, then you can certainly do it with employees or with people who are on your team.
Yeah. Yeah, I have nothing to add to that.
Yep. Period.
Period. Um, Well, Mike, thank you for joining us. I want to make sure that we direct people in the comment section or the description for this episode, both on YouTube and wherever you're listening to this, is I'm going to make sure we include your talk because I do really think it was very profound. It's my favorite of the day. I thought it was great. Um, and I think people really need to start to explore this within themselves. I know for me, and one of the questions I wanted to ask, and maybe this can be another conversation for next time. Um, I am somebody who is a bit of a people pleaser, who is, I'll say, a recovering people pleaser. Not recovered, recovering. Um, so creating that tension or allowing room for that tension, especially if it's not mine. If I have to if I'm coaching or guiding people on a team and letting that tension build so then they can find their both end, you know, that is a struggle. So I would love some insights into where how you know when to stop it or what that looks like for you, or what are you going through internally while this is happening? so that you're making sure that you're staying on the right track and not letting it turn into a fight as opposed to a
Yeah.
conflict.
Well, you heard my figure out what'll kill me and back it off a little bit. Like, so I've made
Yeah.
some mistakes and like I'm really big on accountability with my coaching. So I might check in with someone when they said, I'll do it with a silly GIF sometimes, but every now and then I'll hear like, oh, my kid was sick. And I'm like, ooh, maybe I went a little too far. So I'm willing to trot on some toes
Yeah.
in the spirit of what the client wants. I also, in the coaching approach that I learned, consider that each client is naturally creative, resourceful, and whole.
Mm.
So they can handle it. And it's not my job to fix or to repair. It's my job to help them move toward the meaningful outcomes they want, whether that's something financially they want, whether that's something emotionally they want, spiritually they want, moving towards some sort of meaningful outcome. And realizing that they're going to be okay. And I recognize that there's a therapeutic line, and I'll refer people sometimes, but for the most part, people are resilient. They're going to be okay. And
Mm.
if they really want something, um, it's our job as coaches, I think, to if you want something and you hired me for it, and you're not getting it on your own, are you open to trying something different? And I always ask for permission to be coached. I guess maybe I don't have that people pleasy energy in me that much. I want the outcome that they want.
Mm.
And if that outcome just means I want to feel more confident, that's fine. But I think I'm so oriented on what they're after that I'm willing to make someone uncomfortable to get there. In fact, I kind of feel like that's my job.
Mm.
It's funny because I'm just realizing as you say it that the funny part about people pleasing is it's so short term, that you're just trying to make the person happy in the moment when really what you just described is like healthy people pleasing, is that you're bringing them to the, the healthy outcome that they really need for themselves that will ultimately make them better. But it's like I guess it's the difference between being selfish and selfless, really.
Mm.
And it's really trying to manage my own emotions by handling the uncomfortable short-term distress versus being more selfless and maybe being the bad guy in the moment or not touching something to make everybody else happy so that they look upon you as like the savior.
Mm.
And so that ultimately in the end that you can actually become someone who's helping them truly.
Even in that framing, what I hear is good guy, bad guy. And I think in service of client, not in service of client.
Mm.
One of my pet peeves is when I hear someone sarcastically say that they're living the dream.
Mm.
Like, hey, how's it going? Living the dream. And I'm like, are you? I
Do
want to just stop
you
them.
even know what your dreams
I
are?
Yeah.
want to have this conversation with them because I think there's a lot of people that want more out of life and they're just so busy doing this all day. And there's so much time and so much opportunity that if we stick with it and we stay disciplined and we stay focused on something we want while being flexible, um, there's a lot of great things possible. And if people really feel like they wake up and they're living the dream, that's fantastic. But if they're being sarcastic about it and there's something that they want, that is a great time to call a coach because a coach can help you get that.
Mm.
And sometimes I feel like I'm ramping up the desire a little bit because this is not a dress rehearsal last time I looked. So if you want something, how much discomfort are you willing to stomach to get that thing? Is it a better body? Is it a better job? Is it being able to hike in the woods with your friends for a week every quarter? What is that thing that someone wants? What is that thing that someone dreams of? And if you want some help getting that, then call the right coach that's the right fit for you. And that's not for everyone, but I don't know. I have not really accomplished anything without a little bit of discomfort because it's like I was a distance runner. You know, you got to do a little bit of speed work, you got to do some long distance work, and that creates an adaptation to that stress. You need
Yeah.
like that, you know, there's the distress, the bad stress, the eustress, the good stress. You have to find that sweet spot where your body's adapting and getting better and improving. And I like to live at the edge a little bit and lean into that tension. Doesn't mean I don't relax, but I don't know. I think there's something to be said for being okay with that discomfort. And as a team coach, man, I got to handle a lot of discomfort and be able to manage a lot of anxiety because a lot's going to come up in the room. And it's not for everyone, but I think sometimes a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of discomfort creates the conditions for change.
Yeah. Oh, well said. Well said. Well, where can people find you if they want? Is there sobercoaching.com or Saber Coaching? I'm sorry. Sober
Yeah,
Coaching.
sabercoaching.com. LinkedIn is a great place. I'm pretty active there. Those are the two. And yeah, if they want to take a look at the TED Talk, they can learn about, from Furious George to Curious George. They can learn about the pause button, some helpful tools. But yeah, sabercoaching.com and LinkedIn are the two easiest spots to find me.
And they can learn about a raccoon on meth if they watch the TED Talk. So
I can't wait to go watch this TED Talk. I'm so excited.
Yeah, it's really good.
I hope you like it, Carol.
It's really good. Awesome. Well, all of the links to everything, if you want to get in touch with Mike or Sweeney, will be in the comment section or the description. And Mike, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks
This was a great conversation. Bye, everyone.